Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming first thing on a Monday morning. I'm Mark Gettleson. I know many of you. I am Interim Director of Campaigns and Engagement at the City of London Corporation, overseeing, amongst other things, the City Belonging Project, which is the City of London Corporation's initiative to build a more inclusive square mile where community thrives. Without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to introduce my friend and colleague, the Right Honourable, the Lord Mayor of London, Alastair King.
Thank you, Mark. Always wonderful to see you, and well done for all that you do for the city and the communities within the city. Extremely grateful to you. Fellow Aldermen, honoured guests, it's an immense delight to see you all here today. Thank you very much indeed for turning up at 8 o'clock on a Monday morning, which I think shows the commitment to this remarkable activity we're doing here today, and to the launch of Faith in the City. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Alastair King. I have the enormous honour to be the Lord Mayor of London, the 696th Lord Mayor of London. We're meeting today here at Mansion House, which has been the home to Lord Mayors since 1752. I want to thank the extraordinary organisers, Sughra Ahmed, Rabbi Alex Goldberg, and Michael Wakelin, for helping also to pull this, I think, remarkable event together today. Just across the road here on Walbrook, there is, under the Bloomberg building, there's the Mithraeum, which is an extraordinary place. If you haven't been, I would fully recommend it. And it's an old Roman temple that's been recreated following the discovery of a lot of Roman remains when they built the Bloomberg building. And I think that what is extraordinary is looking at some of those Roman remains is to work out quite how cosmopolitan a city was, London was, over 2,000 years ago. It is remarkable to see how many parts, how many different peoples came here to London in order to live and to do business. And we have the same situation here today. We have 678,000 people come to the city to work. And that's and also within London, Greater London, it's the most diverse and most extraordinary city for diasporas anywhere in the world, and it is a real example to many others. There's an extraordinarily good expression that I use when I go around the world trying to drum up trade for London and the United Kingdom, and that is, if you want to meet Americans, go to New York. If you want to meet the world, come to London. And there's a lot of truth in that, although it does annoy some of my American friends. 80% of the business that we do here in the city is international. With the head of foreign exchange, we have the world-leading insurance sector, we're world-leading foreign exchange sector, world-leading legal sector. We are also home to substantial investments from around the world, including the Shard and Heathrow Airport. We're a transport hub for so many destinations around the world. And there's another thing I say in my programs around the world, and that is, if you want to insure against catastrophe, do it in London. If you want to raise debt or raise equity, do it in London. If you want to fall out with your partners, sue them in London. And wonderfully, the world seems to do exactly that. But London, although it's already an extraordinary destination of choice for so many people of many faiths to come and do work, to live and visit, we do live in an extraordinarily fractured world. We just have to look at any news bulletin in order to be reminded of that terrible fact. And I think that therefore I think this is a very important event that we're doing here today, and that is to promote the City Belonging Project. And I think as part of that, Faith in the City is a landmark research and engagement program that seeks to understand the city's faith needs. We want to help corporate leaders deal with faith matters more confidently, and to put forward solid options for future faith provisions within the square miles, within the square mile for the benefit of workers, residents, and also for visitors. It also builds on something that Mark Gettleson and I have been working, and the rest of the City of London Corporation team, and that is this extraordinary city belonging project, of which the City Belonging Networks is very much a part. We've already launched in the city belonging networks, networks for Muslim and for the Jewish communities. In the works, we've got Hindu, Sikh, and Christian networks coming soon. We'll be launching 15 in total of these remarkable networks during the course of my mayoral year, and I think they're absolutely integral to the things I would like to achieve. It also builds on, I think, some remarkable things that have already been done, and one is by my predecessor, Michael Manelli, who some of you may know. He coordinated a fantastic series of interfaith events on the topic of disagreeing agreeably. And also, I think it builds on a program of events that I did as sheriff in the Old Bailey that some of you may have occurred, were some communities and faiths events, which I've certainly enjoyed, and people seem to feel that they were successful. So the city's status as a world-leading financial hub has always been underpinned by the strength of our communities. The other really important element, though, is we want to make sure we're galvanizing so many of these remarkable communities in order to provide the pool of talent to keep the city growing for the next 25 years. And that's enormously important, that we bring those extraordinary diverse group of people together in order to give the real excellence that we need to make sure that our communities are properly represented and the excellence is maintained. On that note, what I'm going to do, I'm going to pass over to my friend and colleague, the Policy Chair, Chris Hayward, who will tell us a little bit more about our plans to this fund. Hope you have a lovely day today. Thank you very much indeed for coming.
Well, thank you very much indeed, my Lord Mayor. And can I start by doing just as the Lord Mayor has done and welcome each and every one of you to joining us this morning. As the Lord Mayor said, I'm Chris Hayward. I'm one of 100 elected Common Councillors in the City of London, and I'm the Policy Chairman and the political leader of the City of London Corporation. And I want to just start my brief remarks to you this morning by paying a particular personal tribute to our Lord Mayor, because we've had many outstanding Lord Mayors in the City of London, but I think I can say without fear of contradiction that this Lord Mayor is one of the most inclusive Lord Mayors that I have had the honour and pleasure of working with. He genuinely believes in our faiths and in the diversity of this great square mile, and his commitment to the City Belonging project, as he's just outlined, is absolutely huge. So thank you, Lord Mayor, for your own personal endorsement and commitment. And I'm really pleased to see so many of you here bright and early on a Monday morning. Representatives across this room of our city businesses and our resident communities, as well as faith leaders from across the square mile and beyond. Now, this Faith in the City study, funded by the City of London Corporation through our Community Infrastructure Levy, could scarcely, in my view, be more timely, as we strive to attract talent and investment. We strive to become an even more attractive visitor destination and to earn the commute of that record number of city workers. Yes, believe it or not, as the Lord Mayor has mentioned, there are now 687,000 people who work in the square mile. That's up 20% on our pre-pandemic figures. And it's our duty, ladies and gentlemen, to make sure that the city is as open and as possible to every single worker, resident, and visitor. And I believe that our great city is booming because it is a global city, open and attractive to people and capital the world over. And a global city means an inclusive, multi-faith city. Many of our fastest growing markets encompass strong communities of faith, from India to Indonesia, the Middle East to Latin America. Whether someone lives or works here or is visiting for business or pleasure, the city they find themselves in must be responsive to them, whether a space to pray, special dietary needs, a community to feel part of, and so much more. And the vision of an inclusive city has for centuries shown the square mile at its best. Indeed, the ward that I represent on the corporation, I like to tease my colleagues by saying it's the finest ward in the City of London, that of Broad Street, is proudly home to the Dutch church on Austin Friars, the first Dutch language church anywhere in the world, created in 1550 to serve the thousands of Dutch merchants and skilled craftsmen of Tudor London. The return of the city's Jewish community in the 17th century led to the construction of Bevis Marks Synagogue, the oldest synagogue in Great Britain, which has held regular services for 320 years. Now, by the 1860s, my ward was also home to the Ottoman Bank, the central bank of the Turkish Empire. The State Bank of India recently celebrated its centenary of operations in the city, one of 250 foreign banks with a London branch. So international and multi-faith communities find success in the city and in turn, of course, make our great city such a success. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a story we're committed to telling. And I'm delighted that as part of the city's planning and development process, we've been able to secure a new permanent home for the Migration Museum in the Square Mile in 2027. The new museum will include temporary and permanent exhibition galleries, flexible event and education space, an artist studio, outdoor areas, and a cafe restaurant, showcasing the significant impact of migration on food. We're particularly mindful of the need to find suitable prayer spaces for Muslim and other communities across the Square Mile. And I'm pleased that the City of London officers have been working in recent years to do just that, and we will go on doing that, ladies and gentlemen. This is part of our vision of a vibrant, thriving destination that is open and welcoming to all. Before I conclude, I also want to pay a huge personal tribute to Mark Gettleston, who has led with such passion and vigor these initiatives, and without whom none of this would be possible. Thank you, Mark, for all you've done. It's very much my hope, and I know it is the Lord Mayor's, that the Faith in the City initiative will make an invaluable contribution to the work to help us to understand what is needed by our business, resident and visitor communities and put together practical ideas for the future, including how we can better support city businesses in supporting their staff, ensure people of faith have the facilities and services they need, and a broad programme of events and activities that are open to all. So it's now my very great pleasure to introduce the three co-conveners of the Faith in the City project, experts in interfaith work drawn from different religious backgrounds, Sughra Ahmed, Rabbi Alex Goldberg, and Michael Wakelin. And thank you all very much for your attention. Thank you.
So good morning, everybody. On behalf of myself and my colleagues here, I really want to thank the Lord Mayor and the Policy Chairman for hosting us this morning and for your support for this exciting and groundbreaking initiative. It was just over a year ago that Mark Gettleston messaged Rabbi Alex Goldberg out of the blue and said, if the Square Mile was going to have a world-leading interfaith offer, what would it look like? A few hundred emails, WhatsApps, Zooms, text messages, and a meeting or two later, here we are. A bit breathless, but very excited to be in the Mansion House with you this morning, launching the first phase of our Faith in the City project. In the next 15 minutes or so, my esteemed colleagues and I will be introducing the work that lies ahead for us, explaining the vision, the methodology, and the inspiration that we have gleaned from other big city interfaith initiatives and enterprises around the world. And there is also an opportunity for you to get involved, as you will become the first part of our research into identifying the potential need and possible outcomes of the project. Some of you have already downloaded the QR code, and you're welcome to start using that. But if you haven't downloaded it, just to repeat what Mark said earlier, you can go to menti.com, and the number 3641 0094, 3641 0094, and your comments and questions would be most welcome. So first of all, what is the task? Well, a landmark research and engagement program to understand the faith and belief needs of the square mile and to put forward ideas for the future. That's our job. What's our vision? To make the City of London the most faith-friendly and religiously literate business district in the world, enabling it to attract and retain the very best global talent for the benefit of all communities in the square mile and beyond. And you may be wondering who we are, so I shall put you out of your misery. Sughra, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes.
It's on.
Yeah, wonderful. Yes, good morning. My name is Sughra Ahmed. I am one of the co-conveners with my esteemed colleagues here this morning. My expertise lies in religion, culture, and interfaith work, which I've been doing for several decades in the UK, but also at Yale and at Stanford universities in the US. I've essentially spent my career working at the nexus of academia, policymaking and community activism, and the blend of those three areas is exactly what is needed to be one of the co-conveners of this program. So I'm very proud to be able to be here with my colleagues today in launching Faith in the City.
I'm Rabbi Alex Goldberg. I'm Dean of Religious Life and Belief at the University of Surrey. I was formerly Chair of Faith Forum for London, and I do a bit of consultancy work for the United Nations and on their executive for a program called Faith for Rights. I'm pleased to be here, having done a life of interfaith, but the city is in my heart. I was called to the Bara Inner Temple in the city. I was ordained at Bevis Marks in the city, and I'm proud of being part of this project, Faith in the City, and I'm looking forward to working with everybody in this room to make it happen.
And I'm Michael Wakelin. I worked at the BBC for 23 years, ending up as head of religious broadcasting. When I left in 2010, I joined the Cambridge University Interfaith Programme, and I was charged with coming up with innovative new programmes to raise the level of interfaith dialogue. And I'm proud to say that several of the projects came into being, including the Religion Media Centre, who are represented here today, of which I'm executive chair, the Senior Faith Leadership Programme, which is based at St George's, Windsor, and the Religious Literacy Partnership, working with the public and private sectors, improving religious literacy in the workplace. So the first thing we've got to do is to identify what the current provision is. We've identified that there are 54 churches in the square mile, so we won't be building any more of those. The oldest synagogue in the UK is here, built in 1701, at Bevis Marks. There are community organisations and informal prayer spaces, and various workplaces also have faith networks and prayer spaces. But is the current provision in the City of London enough for all those people who want it? Sughra.
Now, in order to find out what you all think about the things that we're talking about this morning, we have 3 questions for you via the QR code that you would have scanned using Menti. So these 3 questions, we're going to start with the first one today. For those of you who haven't scanned the code, please feel free to go ahead. I think there's one here and maybe even one on the screen at the very back. And so our first question this morning is, are you part of a faith community in the city? Are you part of a faith community in the city? And if so, which one? And here we have the word cloud appearing before us. So the largest word that you can see is the most popular answer in the room. And we can see Christian, Muslim, Jewish being quite pronounced there, but I can also see Hindu, CAV, or Church of England, Roman Catholic, a City Hindus network, quite a variety of different faiths in the room. Jain. And I can see that people have said Hindu or Muslim in different ways, and so it doesn't kind of coalesce because it's not the exact same word. So there's a very strong faith contingent in the room, and it's very diverse. We believe that's reflective of the square mile. Thank you. Over to you, Alex.
Since starting this project, since that famous text from Mark, what would provision look like? Actually, he didn't say that. He said, get back from America. What are you doing at Princeton? There are better things to do in the City of London. And he's absolutely right. This is a marvellous Lord Mayor, Chair, Chris, thank you for bringing me back, because I'm really enjoying this project. What we're going to look now at is several models around the world and around the UK. UK models like my own Religious Life and Belief Centre, one of many higher education, further education projects which look at pastoral care, prayer space, celebrating festivals, integrating with academic, professional support staff. My university is a quarter of a mile, it's half a mile squared, so half the size of the city. Canary Wharf has had a chaplaincy for well over a decade now, and it's a unique model which is funded and supported by businesses on the Canary Wharf estate. And the 2012 Olympic Games, which had over 190 chaplains as part of the team. We'll go into more detail in a moment. Next slide. Around the world, there are also models, some of which we will be looking at for the City of London, some of which we will take a cursory glance. Interfaith Centre for New York is really fascinated. It's got great programming across the city, across Manhattan, and into Brooklyn, Queens, and the other two boroughs. And I think that's an interesting position for programming in a major metropolitan city. We have the House of One in Berlin, which is a beautiful space being built, which is Abrahamic, looking at prayer space and a mosque, a church, and a synagogue all in one. And then we have the Abrahamic Family House in Abu Dhabi. I'd love to tell you how much this cost, but the Emirati government stopped giving accounts about 6 years ago. It's beautiful, it's stunning, and I don't think we're going to build in the City of London because we need the space of half the City of London to build it. But it's certainly a model worth looking at in terms of its programming and build. Let's go into a couple of models in detail. This one, obviously, I know very well. When I came into post at the University of Surrey, there were about 5 chaplains, and the model had been for years a Roman Catholic and a Church of England chaplain. Today, we have 33 members of the chaplaincy team from 8 faiths and beliefs. It's not just a question of doing the right thing, which I think it is. It's a question of business needs, international needs, recruitment and retention. Doing the right thing can be also the business reason to do it. Doing the right thing can also be the well-being reason to do it. Doing the right thing, I believe, can be the spiritual reason to do it. All 3 can come together. At the University of Surrey, we have a specific pastoral care centre. We have unique prayer spaces for Jewish, Christian, Muslim, and Hindu communities. We have a meditation space for Buddhists. We have facilities for the Sikh community. For those of the Sikh community, we did ask our students, would you look after Guru Granth Sahib on a rota all the week? And the answer was, no, we don't have time. So that was the answer to that. We also have looked at dietary inclusivity, not by having a pack of kosher sandwiches next to halal sandwiches, but actually changing our kitchens atomically. By that, we have salad bars, and we have potato bars, and we bring in cheeses which go across those faiths that eat any sort of cheese. By changing our dietary and catering needs, every student on campus can have lunch, something that doesn't exist at most universities in this country. And finally, we have interfaith events and programs, not only internally, but sponsored by Surrey County Council, Guildford Borough Council, by the United Nations, by interfaith bodies across the world. And we have a training program that brings chaplains together. Every chaplain should be able to deal with their own faith community, and every chaplain should be able to deal generically. We've made a package which fits with the business model of the university. Looking at a model for the City of London, when I'm speaking to you, we want a business model and a faith model and a faith and belief provision which fits with the needs of a modern business hub in the City of London. Next slide. Canary Wharf, not so far from here, has had a chaplaincy for many years. The unique thing about Canary Wharf, as I said before, is it is supported by many of the companies on the estate, originally 4 of them. And they have 5 part-time multi-faith chaplains and 1 full-time chaplain. They've just got a new chaplain, and I wish her the best of luck in her job, having had Fiona Stewart-Darling for many years. It maintains an office in the centre of the estate, but it visits businesses, it goes to them, it works with their HR departments and EDI departments, a model perhaps that can be used here, maybe expanded on for the needs of the City of London. Next slide. This is one of my favourite models. I sit on an FA panel, and when we were bidding for the World Cup, I said, whatever the Olympics did, let's do that. And I hope they do one day. But it was amazing. 193 chaplains. And why does it work for us? Because it looked at sectoral chaplaincy. It looked at chaplaincy for visitors. It looked at chaplaincy for athletes, those who'd worked in the field of sports and athletics and football. It looked at chaplaincy for the media. Michael and I have Michael's worked on the BBC for years, but Michael, when I went into the media chaplaincy for a couple of weeks, everyone was going, well, what do you do, darling? And it was... And somebody said, pause for thought, which Michael edits, and somebody else went, I'm thought for the day. I said, I'm BBC One, big questions, and a Catholic priest goes, oh, television, how cheap. But what was amazing is we spent 3 years preparing it. So you could go around the park, and every bit of the park had dietary provisions for all faiths. All volunteers had costume and attire that matched their religious tradition. There was an attire for Muslim workers and volunteers, Hindu, Jews, Sikhs, and it was slightly changed each time so people would feel comfortable working, volunteering, and competing in London 2012. The aim was to become the world's Olympics, that everybody here would have a community that they recognize because London is so diverse. That same diversity is in the workforce, the residents and the visitors to the City of London, and it's a model worth reviving in part. Next slide. So these are some of the examples we have. As I said before, my own chaplains would say it's about compassion, it's about justice, it's about well-being, it's about respect for one another. And when we match respect to the needs of our workforce, and we give our workforce some faith provision, it keeps them here. The city has long hours culture. We must learn to work, rest, and play, and that includes our spiritual exercise as well as our gym. It's up to you in the room and beyond to help shape this. And in order to do this, I'm going to pass on to my colleague Sughra, who's going to go back to Menti and ask you some initial questions as we venture together in creating faith in the city. Thank you.
Well, you are all hot on it. You're already answering that question. Wonderful. The question is, what are you actually saying, though? Is there something from the examples that Alex was sharing that inspired you? Diversity, respect, those are some of the biggest words. Dietary prayer, of course, is there, but also things like shared values, inclusion, It gives you a sense of what the values are of those who are in this room this morning. And I don't know about you, but it makes me feel really good about who's in this room. It makes me feel as though this is our project. It's not just a project that sits somewhere else and that will do things to you, but actually your involvement in this work will help us to grow this project, this program, particularly through our research, into an inclusive program that sees you and hears you. So the top 4 words that I can see are community, respect, diversity, and inclusion. Wonderful. Thank you. A key part of our work is the research side of our program for the next couple of months at least. So over the next 6 weeks or so, particularly, we are going to be running focus groups, a survey, interviews, in order to try and capture the voices, the experiences, the expertise, and the needs of all of those who spend time in the square mile. So whether you live here, whether you work here, whether you visit, we are really interested in hearing your views, your experiences, and your perspectives. And we've deliberately designed 3 ways in which lots of different kinds of people can do that. So based on what your role is, based on your the rhythm of your work, the rhythm of your day, the demands on your time, we've tried to create an easy way for everybody to engage. So first of all, and soon after this launch this morning, you will receive a digital opportunity to engage in our survey. The survey allows you to answer questions that are quite wide-ranging, but all focused and designed to elicit as much information about your experiences as possible. You don't want me to interpret those on your behalf. We want to hear you speak for yourself. Secondly, over the next few weeks, the rest of this month, in fact, in February, we will be running over a dozen focus groups all around the square mile. We want to be able to go to the places where people can find us easily, so hence the different locations. We also want to be digital and in person, because we know you have exceptionally busy lives. Somebody said to me this morning, this is a fantastic turnout for 8 o'clock in the morning, 8:30 in the morning. And it speaks volumes about how important this topic might be to you and to the people that you know. It's important to us too. And then finally, we will have interviews with key people all around the city to make sure that various different voices are included in our research. So that will include people who lead businesses, who lead who have political mandates and lead political portfolios, and many, many more. So if you would like to join our focus groups, there will be a method on doing so, and we will be emailing everybody who's joined our mailing list afterwards to share with you how you can actually sign up for a focus group. Of course, the output of all of this information, once the data is crunched and the storytelling sort of begins, the output will be that we create a plan that shares with you, that shows you the future provision of faith and belief in the city. Now, one last opportunity to engage with the questions. So now the question is, what is one thing you need more of to meet your faith and belief needs in the city? One thing that you need more of to meet your faith and belief needs whilst you're in the city. So we have answers coming through prayer space, workplace provisions, meditation, an active community. That's interesting, isn't it? Often when we think about our needs, it can be food, prayer, am I meeting those objectives in a way that makes me feel good? But actually, we want to meet people, we want to connect with people, and we want an active community. Ethical finance, quite important for this part of the country. Support career progression. And finally, diverse faith literacy. So something like religious literacy. Fantastic. Excellent. There are lots more answers coming in. These are really exciting for us because it gives us, it's a litmus test about how you're feeling and what you're thinking. There are different ways that you can get involved. I've explained how you're going to get involved in the survey and the focus groups, and that we're also going to be doing some interviews. But don't forget to sign up. If you haven't signed up on the list already today or before arriving today, make sure that you do sign up before you leave. And over to you, Michael.
I think, Sughra, we're going to go straight to the panel. Do you want to get the panel up? Yeah?
So we're really excited and actually really grateful that Yunus, Louise, and Josh have made time to be with us this morning. They each represent, if you'd like to come up, they each represent different sectors in our city. Yunus is head of chaplaincy at Barts NHS Health Trust. Louise is director of inclusion at Macfarlanes LLP. And Rev Josh Harris is priest in charge at St. Katharine Cree. Each of them serve very different audiences in this city, and we're quite keen to hear what that serving looks like, how that feels, and so much more. So I'm going to just go over there and grab my... Okay, so first of all, let's start with you, Yunus. Could you please introduce yourself and the organisation that you are representing today?
Thank you, Sughra. My name is Yunus Dudhwala. I'm the head of chaplaincy at Barts Health NHS Trust. I'm an imam, graduated from a seminary in the UK and then went to Al-Azhar University in Cairo. And then I started chaplaincy at Newham Hospital in East London in 1998. And then about 26, 27 years ago. And then after 9/11, I had to spend a bit of time in Belmarsh as a chaplain. I know what you were all thinking. It's okay. And then I came back as the head of chaplaincy at Newham Hospital in 2003, became head of chaplaincy at Barts in 2014, and I manage a team of around 12 chaplains, 20 volunteers, and as the Rabbi mentioned, in what he does in Surrey is very similar to what I do at Barts Health.
Louise, can we come to you?
Hello, everyone. So I'm Louise Zekaria. I am Director of Inclusion and Corporate Social Responsibility at Macfarlanes, which is a law firm near Holborn. We have about 900 colleagues that I'm thinking about all the time and their day-to-day experience in our workplace. Personally, I'm a practicing Jew. I got married in Vevesmark, so it's lovely to see Rabbi Morris here today, and my father-in-law actually was the leader there for many years. So really the sort of fabric of the city is woven into me. And when I was a lawyer, junior lawyer many years ago, my faith was something that I had to grapple with in terms of how I incorporated it into deals, clients, how I would be responsive over a Sabbath or not, and having a number of conversations with my bosses about how and when I could be available. So it's something that I've really thought about for people who are practicing and of faith, that it's an integral part of who you are, and therefore the workplace and the city needs to help you practice as you live your day, because that is what governs who you are, really, your faith, if you are practicing and of belief. So that's part of how I use that in my workplace today.
Thank you. Josh, over to you.
My name's Josh Harris. I'm a priest and I lead the Guild Church for Workers at St. Katharine Cree over on Leadenhall Street. And I'm there because about 5 or so years ago, we began just getting to know workers on the eastern part of the city. I think in the end, we had about 500 face-to-face conversations, a lot of them at 4 a.m. at Aldgate bus station, meeting cleaners coming into the city and saying, what do you need from the community? What do you need from a church? And that's led to us renewing the vocation of St. Katharine's as a church, particularly for workers. I mean, we've been there since 1280, so we've done a bit of adapting to a changing city over the years. But today we have a congregation that's primarily Latin American, Spanish-speaking services, That's because most of the cleaners in that part of the city are from that part of the world. But we've got other activities as well and community focus on workers in the City of London.
Could you tell us, let me come to you, stay with you, Josh. Tell us about how you're serving the changing faith and belief needs of the communities that you serve, because that example that you just shared about who you're serving, I think is really interesting.
Yeah, so we really just, part of the point of that walking was, it's easy, isn't it, to stand where you are and just see the same people that come through your door. So we got out and about and we met people and realized that there was a gap. A lot of new arrivals to the city come with all kinds of backgrounds and languages and religious practice. And so as we were getting to know people, realized that actually a lot of those arrivals, particularly those that are working over in my side of the city in cleaning or security or delivery riders, are religious. Religious practice is part of who they are. So there was an opportunity to build a community, as I say, particularly with Latin Americans, but we've also done things in Albanian and all sorts of languages. But it's about how do we give space. I have this amazing, not quite as amazing as this, but an amazing Grade 1 listed church building. And for me, it's who do we open up to give space to within the city. So for me, that's a church community that's diverse and multilingual. It's a centre for workers. So I partner with, there's some corporate firms, charities, trade unions, and we have support. We have English classes, legal advice, all the things that you need if you're a worker arriving in the city to make your way and make the most of the opportunities that are here. And then also we have a chaplaincy. I'm well connected with Canary Wharf Chaplaincy, but also other churches in the city offer chaplaincy to individuals for personal support, but also helping corporates navigate faith. So that's a little of what we're doing. But it really comes from that listening and getting out and meeting people and seeing what needs there are.
That's brilliant, Josh. And I know that's a very succinct capture. We will never really understand the full extent of what the three of you do in serving the communities. But Yunus, if we could get a little snapshot from yourself first.
Yeah, so in the hospital, you get patients, you get families, you get staff. And I've been head of chaplaincy for many, many years, but I also chair the Interfaith and Belief Network for staff in the hospital. And one of the things that which Louise, you mentioned in terms of when somebody's working in a hospital or somebody comes to the hospital, I don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable bringing their faith to the hospital. And one of the things I always say as the chair of the Interfaith Network is, when you come to the hospital, you should not be leaving your faith at the door just like you leave your coat and your umbrella. You should be bringing your faith inside the hospital. You should be proud about it. Don't force it onto others. Don't impose it on others. But as long as you need something from your faith, we will try and provide it. And one of the biggest challenges that we have is we have a very, very diverse staff community, diverse patients, and to care for everybody's needs is sometimes challenging. And so we have multi-faith prayer rooms within the hospital. In Barts Hospital, we have a Jewish community room. We have a Muslim prayer room. We have Barts LLP Church within the grounds of Barts Hospital. But then, even then, the access and the staff has another building where at St. Martin's Le Grand, and they wanted facilities there. So it's always challenging to try and provide space for the needs of the staff, the patients, and the visitors that come and the families that come. So we try our best, but I think it's always an ongoing thing.
Space is such a premium in the square mile as well, so I can imagine that it's an ongoing challenge. Louise, would you like to share some things about how you support the people that you work with?
So I've actually worked with Michael with the Religious Literacies Partnership when it first began about 6 or 7 years ago. So when I joined Macfarlanes, what I was hearing from people and from my own experience, I knew that people were looking for places to be able to pray and practice their faith first and foremost. So we've created prayer spaces, multi-faith prayer spaces, but also we've got contemplation spaces, so for people who aren't of faith but also want to perhaps meditate or think about, take some time out in their day. So we were very careful in the way that we spoke about what those spaces could be used for and how people could use them to enable them to sort of get through their very long day. But also thinking about washing facilities, that's really important. Dietary requirements, making sure again that it's not sort of an add-on to an event, but incorporated and thought about. Sort of drinks and alcohol-free and kosher wine, and thinking again about people not feeling they have to have a glass of orange juice, but feel completely incorporated into an event. I've done a lot of work with our events teams to make sure when you're thinking about when you plan an event, have you checked the key festivals that are difficult for people if you don't understand about how festivals fall, that they can change different dates, different months, depending on the time of year. They could come in at different times of the day. So being mindful and cognizant of all of the different ways that people need to think about for planning so that people feel they're able to come, because that's important for our clients as well as our colleagues. And that's been a really key part of what we've done. So whilst it's creating spaces and for people in our workplace to feel included, it's also been hugely about education. So educating colleagues, management, thinking about the whole infrastructure of the way we run our business that is sort of fully inclusive for people of faith.
Louise, if I can just stay with you, actually. In our final question, in this fast-paced city where clearly faith and belief is important to people, not just in this room, but also lots and lots of others. It's a key marker of our identities. How can institutions of the Square Mile better help or support you in the work that you're doing, whether that's businesses or another sector?
So I think a key part is actually integration. So we run cultural lunches. We have a race and ethnicity cultural heritage network, which is our umbrella network. And within that, we have our relatively new individual faith groups. And they will put on throughout the year events, drop-in lunches where anyone in the firm can come along. So whether that's Lunar New Year that we've just had, we've got an Easter lunch coming up, we'll do something for Shavuot, we've got all of our iftars. But the key part of those is thinking about how people who come along learn about the faith and what their colleagues are practicing. So there's a very strong educational aspect to that. But on top of that, I would say one thing that we've done is reverse mentoring, where people of faith, often junior colleagues, will mentor senior colleagues in the firm, specifically around how faith, as part of their sort of intersectional sort of identity, impacts and sort of navigates their life. And I think that's been a really interesting way that senior leadership, particularly people who aren't of faith and don't understand the ramifications of someone who's believing, needs that sort of thought and understanding in terms of how you sort of run a business in an inclusive way.
That's fantastic. And I think that's a creative way of being able to share the ripples of knowledge and therefore influence the way in which structures in these industries actually can work. With reverse mentoring, you wouldn't often expect that, but there's so much to learn that can directly impact the way in which a business runs. So thank you. Josh, can I come to you next? And then Yunus, finish with you with this question.
Thank you. And it sounds fabulous. And there is such great work happening, particularly in the corporates, to have the resource to do that. A number of things from my perspective. One is, how do we enable communities to flourish? Religion, for most people that practice, isn't just an individual pursuit. And so part of what we're trying to do at St. Catherine's is, how do we create space for community? There's a lot of overlap between culture and religion. So last weekend, for example, we hosted a Alicitas celebration. It's a Bolivian cultural celebration, not particularly religious, but that's a really significant part for that community. And it mattered to them that the church was willing to host that. And so how do we foster a diverse group of communities within the city so that people can meet people, one another? And that's part of my hope for this process, is it's not just as it were, a set of relationships we will have with whether it's this project or other institutions, but actually the convening power in the city enables us to get to know each other and to build those links between as well as within communities. And that matters, I think, because part of it is about how do we enable people to put down deep roots within the city and within their own religious practice. Because when we have deep roots, it allows us to bring walls down, because we feel secure, we feel safe, we feel confident, and that's what enables us to have really fruitful and honest interfaith dialogue in that. The other thing for me is I think the work that corporates do is amazing. I guess I'm mindful of the people in the city that are not part of a large corporation that has someone doing amazing work like Louise and her colleagues. So that might be SMEs. We have them in the city, often forgotten, but we have them in multi-tenanted buildings, for example. What does prayer provision look like for them? Delivery riders, really significant issue around particularly Muslims with prayer spaces in the city. If you don't work in a building, if you don't have the security pass, where do you pray? So there's lots of those workers, those that work overnight, some of the ones that our project started with. How are we meeting the needs of all of the city's workers, not just those that have access to the groups and diversity networks that are obviously a really significant part of it, but how do we ensure that every worker in the city, as well as residents and visitors, is part of this process?
Josh, that's brilliant. Thank you very much. It reminds me of one of the answers on Mentee active community, and I think a lot of what you're saying is really deeply connected with that, and therefore people in the room. Finally, Yunus, could we come to you?
Yeah, I think this research is going to be really important to capture what's happening at the moment and what's needed. And from what we can see, as Reverend mentioned, we have city workers, we have taxi workers who might come into the city and they don't have any space to pray. Forget prayer, I think they don't have any space to park, so they're not going to pray. Yeah. So they're not going to stop anywhere. And I think, we need to really think about what is important to the individual who is working for us. And I think you all here today are going to be ambassadors for this research and try and capture as much as we can to understand what is needed for the city. Today, later on in Barts, I'm going to chair a webinar on World Hijab Day, because it was on the first on Saturday. So just to raise awareness, we'll have another webinar on Ramadan coming up. We'll have another webinar on Eid. We've had a webinar on pilgrimages when it comes to the Hajj, and what's a pilgrimage from the Jewish perspective, what's a pilgrimage from a Hindu perspective. So all of these awareness webinars are so easy to deliver, but they're very educational, very powerful. People then understand the needs of individuals who work in their organizations. So I think this is an amazing project, and I hope it's successful in terms of what it captures, but I hope it's even more successful in the outcomes.
That's brilliant. I mean, I didn't expect you to say that, but what a voice to end on in terms of our panel. I'm very, very grateful, Yunus, Louise, Josh, for you to give the time, but also just give us this incredibly deep insight into what it's like to work in the sector that you're working in and the impact that work actually is having. We all live in bubbles. We don't really have this visibility into what each other's work looks like. And so another way of bringing people together is programs like this. So we're very, very grateful for the work that you all do. Please, everybody join me in saying thanks to Louise, Josh, and Yunus. And we've got just a few minutes, barely that. I'm getting a sign, actually we don't. We don't have any time for questions at this stage, but if I could hand the microphone over to the conspirator of all of this, Mark Gettelson.
Thank you so much, Sughra. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to our panel. I think it is fair to say this event has been actually beyond my wildest dreams of what I thought we might be able to achieve this morning. And I think we're we're starting off with a really exciting tone, and the number of conversations I've had about this project been really, really encouraging. As has been said, please, when you get the survey by email, please let your first thought be, if you're in a workplace or you're in a community in the Square Mile or you're in a place of worship, please ensure that everyone, even if they only have a tiny bit of faith in your workplace, fills in the survey. Actually, they're the people we're most interested in hearing from. And they may be, for instance, if you're in a city business, they may be in other staff networks. They may not regard themselves as a person of sufficient faith to get involved with an interfaith network, but they might be in ethnic minority networks or women's networks or LGBT networks and so on. So please ensure that it gets out. Lastly, thank you so much to my colleague, Alice Mazzola, who has done so much work putting this event together, to the team at Mansion House, including the catering team, and thank you all for coming this morning. Thank you.